Anyhow, at Iowa Falls, we heard from people who told us, no, I'm not getting $12,000, $13,000 a year. I'm trying to live on $10,000 a year. And then we heard another woman talk about what it means to have minimum wage jobs and how difficult it is to survive. And that is the reality for millions and millions of people in this country. It's a reality we don't talk enough about, and it's certainly a reality that we are not effectively addressing. Now, here's the story. If we were a poor country, and there are poor countries around the world, you have a certain type of discussion. And you say, it's unfortunate that we have to live in poverty, but that's who we are. We're a poor country. We can't have good education. We can't have good health care. We can't have decent paying jobs. We're a poor country. But the truth is, as everybody here knows, the United States of America is not a poor country. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most people don't know that because almost all of the new wealth and income is going to the top 1%. And brothers and sisters, what a Sanders administration is about is a very radical idea. You ready for a radical idea? We're going to create an economy that works for working families, not just billionaires. And not only that, in the last 30 years, as everybody in this room knows, technology has exploded. Almost every worker in America is more productive than he or she was 20, 30 years ago, right? You're producing more. Question, if you are more productive, if we are producing more, why are millions of people working longer hours for lower wages? All right. Why is almost all new income and wealth going to a small This is the United States of America, the greatest country on the face of the earth. You tell me why our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our levees, our dams, our airports, our rail system are deteriorating or crumbling. All right. We need to invest, and a $1 trillion investment, which I believe we should make, creates 13 million decent paying jobs. Including a lot of good steelworker jobs. Now, every person in this room, because the steelworkers are one of the great unions in our country, you understand the history of the trade union movement. And you understand that change, real change, never comes from the top on down. It always comes from the bottom on up. And you understand the way back when employers did not say, well, I think it's a great idea for workers to have a union. We'd love to sit down and do some collective bargaining with you because we think that's fair and that's right. It's not the way it happened. The way it happened is way back when workers went on strike, workers fought, and workers died. Workers were beaten, workers were fired from their jobs in order to make sure that working people could organize, could engage in collective bargaining, could sit down at a table and fight for decent wages and decent working conditions. That's the history of the trade union movement, and we should be proud of that. But all of you know is that over the last several decades, despite the fact that millions of workers want to join a union, it has become harder and harder for workers to, in fact, create unions, to become members of unions. You know, and I know, that employers have acted illegally with the support of the NLRB, so that if workers try to organize, the organizers there would be fired. And if by some miracle people actually did organize a union, employers would refuse to engage in a first contract collective bargaining, stalled it out. And that is why I believe that the middle class does not grow unless the trade union movement grows. The middle class does not prosper unless workers are engaged in strong collective bargaining. Now what a lot of non-union people don't understand is that to the degree they get anywhere near decent wages, it has a lot to do with the success of the trade union movement, because you're driving wages up. In any case, after decades of illegal action on the part of employers, it seems to me we have got to make it easier, not harder, for workers to join unions. That's why we have introduced a new EFCA piece of legislation, and it says very simply that if 50% of workers in a unit plus one sign a card saying they want to be in a union, they will have a union. Here's the truth. I'm not going to tell you that every worker in America wants to join a union, but what I will tell you is that millions of them do. Millions of them understand that workers who have a union get better wages, better working conditions, and better benefits. And our job is to say that the American people must be able to exercise their constitutional right to organize unions without illegal impediments on the part of employers, and that is what I intend to do. I mentioned earlier that there are millions of seniors and disabled veterans in this country. And by the way, as the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, let me thank all of the men and women in this room and in this country for their service to our country. For their putting their lives on the line to defend this country. And here's a promise I make, is that we will do our best, absolute best, and there should not be any debate about this, whether you're a conservative, progressive, Democrat, or Republican. When people put their lives on the line to defend this country and they come home, they are going to get the best health care available. They're going to get the benefits that they earned. But here's the difference that Secretary Clinton and I have on a very important issue. I believe that when millions of seniors and disabled vets struggling to get by on $12,000 or $13,000 a year, it is not good enough to say, and I've led the effort on this, that we're not going to cut Social Security. That is an abomination. What we must do is say, of course, we're not going to cut Social Security, but we are going to expand Social Security benefits. And here is how we are going to do it. It is not complicated. Right now, somebody makes $5 million a year, somebody makes $118,000 a year. They both contribute the same amount into the Social Security Trust Fund. If you lift that cap and you start at $250,000 and above, so top 1.5% of the American people, what we can do is increase Social Security benefits for those now living under $16,000 a year by $1,300 a year. That's not insignificant for people who are struggling. And when we do that, we also extend the life of Social Security from 19 years to 50 years. Now, that is my view. I think that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when the wealthy are getting much wealthier, you know what? I think it is just appropriate, just right, to lift that cap and ask the wealthiest people in this country to make sure that all seniors can live in dignity. That is my view. If Secretary Clinton drops in, ask her her view. I don't think she agrees. Now, when we talk, and Steve raised this issue, when we talk about why it is that the great middle class of this country is disappearing, why it is that we have 47 million people living in poverty, why it is that we have massive wealth and income inequality, one of the important reasons is our disastrous trade policies. You are looking at a former United States congressman. I represented Vermont in the Congress for 16 years, and a senator today. You are looking at a member of the Senate who in his life voted against NAFTA, against CAFTA, against PNTR with China. And by the way, is helping to lead the opposition to the TPP. Now, look, everybody in this room understands what these disastrous trade agreements are about. You all know who wrote these trade agreements. Not complicated. Steelworkers did not write these trade agreements. They were written by corporate America to benefit corporate America. People who could care less about what these trade agreements did to working families. Here's what they've done. Since 2001 in America, we have lost 60,000 factories. Got that? In my state, in Iowa, all across this country, 60,000 factories. Not all of that, to be fair, is attributable to trade. There are other reasons why factories shut down, but a lot of it is attributable to trade. And when you lose 60,000 factories, many of them attributable to disastrous trade agreements, you're talking about the loss of millions of good paying American jobs. Everybody knows what the purpose of these trade agreements were supposed to do. They did exactly what corporate America wanted them to do. What they were designed to do is to say, why should we pay workers in the United States 20, 25, 30 bucks an hour, provide decent benefits, negotiate with unions, protect the environment? Why would any corporation want to do that when they could shut down in America, throw people out on the street, move to China, move to Mexico, move to low-wage countries, pay people pennies an hour, not have to worry about the environment, not have to deal with unions, and then they can bring their products back into this country? The simple truth is, and it's indisputable, these trade agreements have been a disaster for working families in this country. They have benefited the CEOs of large multinational corporations. No one can deny that reality. And I am proud to tell you that way back when I was on the picket line in opposition to NAFTA and helped lead the opposition against all of these trade agreements. But I got to tell you also, these trade agreements have been supported not just by Republicans, but by some Democrats as well. We got to acknowledge that. Where we are today is to say that when our country is deindustrializing, you know what I mean by that? What I mean, you tell me, how are we a great nation if we're not purchasing the products that we need that are made in our country? Can you be a great country? Can you be a great country where everything you buy is made in China? I don't think so. I don't think so. And by the way, this is another important point to be made. It is not only the loss of jobs, it is what we call the race to the bottom. So here's what's going on. People are saying, and this is a good thing, people are saying, well, you know what? We're seeing an uptick in manufacturing in America. Good. Take a look at the wages that those new manufacturing jobs are paying. There was once a time when manufacturing jobs, unionized manufacturing jobs, were the gold standard for the working class of this country. You had a good job in a manufacturing plant, you had a union, you were making middle-class wages and middle-class benefits. But then, I'll tell you a story. A couple of years ago in Louisville, Kentucky, General Electric announced that they were expanding their manufacturing capabilities, creating a couple of hundred jobs, and people are very excited about it. And they asked this guy from GE, they said, well, why are you doing this? He said, well, it turns out that if you add all of these things together, transportation costs and the fact that wages in America have gone down, it is actually more competitive to do manufacturing in America now than in China, because wages have gone down so much. So they're paying people in manufacturing 10, 12 bucks an hour. Now, if manufacturing workers are paid 10, 12 bucks an hour, what do you think other workers are going to be getting? This is the race to the bottom. What they have always wanted, not to bring Chinese wages up to where we were, it's to bring our wages down to where Chinese wages were. So this TPP, they want us to support the TPP. They want our people to compete against workers in Vietnam. I have nothing against workers in Vietnam. I was there. They work very hard. Minimum wage in Vietnam is 65 cents an hour. I do not want American workers to have to compete against people who are making 65 cents an hour. So we have to take a deep breath. We have to understand that our trade policies have failed, and we have to begin an entirely new set of policies. And the bottom line for me is that every major corporation in America wants all of us to buy their products. Can't turn on the TV, buy this, buy that, buy that. Well, if they want us to buy their products, they damn well better start manufacturing those products back in the United States and not in China. Let me touch on another important issue, and I'm glad that our brothers and sisters from the Nurses Union, and we thank you so much for your support. Reason that the nurses are supporting our campaign is that these are serious people who want to be able to do their job as well as they can. Right? Their job is to prevent disease. Their job is to take care of people who are sick. But right now, they and many, many other people in the healthcare profession are unable to do the job that they were trained to do. Now, I think the Affordable Care Act has made some important steps forward. And one important step forward that we are going to not allow to go forward is the so-called Cadillac tax. All right? And we have delayed that, and we will continue to push that back. Workers who gave up wage increases and other benefits for decent health care should not be penalized for those sacrifices. But the Affordable Care Act, which I voted for and strongly supported, did a number of good things. It did away with this obscenity called pre-existing conditions. You all know what that is? This private insurance obscenity which said that if you had a disease years ago, they would not cover you for the disease that you needed coverage for. You know, it's like getting fire insurance, except if you have a fire, then they don't pay. So we got rid of that. We have expanded health insurance to some 17 million Americans. We have made it fairer for women who are forced to pay higher rates than they should have for the crime of being a woman. So we kind of eliminated that. But having said that, here is the reality of healthcare today. And what our campaign is about is asking the American people to think big, not small. Here we are. United States of America today is the only major country on earth, the only one, that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. They do it in England, do it in France, do it in Germany, do it all over Scandinavia. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. They do that. Every major country does it. In America today, 29 million people have no health insurance at all. Millions more have high deductibles and high copayments. Sound familiar? Okay. And by the way, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. At a time when 1 out of 5 Americans are unable to afford the prescription drugs their doctors are prescribing, at a time when seniors are cutting their pills in half because they can't afford to buy what they need. The 3 major drug companies in America last year made $45 billion in profit. And because they are so powerful, because they provide hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying and campaign contributions, because they have 1,400 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., there is no legislation on the books to prevent them from doubling, tripling, quadrupling the price that you pay for your medicine. They are getting away with murder, and in some cases, they are committing murder. We hear from oncologists who are dealing with cancer patients, and they're telling us our cancer patients can't afford the medicine that they need. We're dealing, in some cases, with folks who have hepatitis C, new drug, a very effective drug out. You know what that drug costs? $1,000 a pill. What we have got to tell the pharmaceutical industry. Now, let me back up and tell you a story for a moment. Late 1990s, when I represented Vermont in the Congress, I took a busload of women from northern Vermont over the Canadian border to Montreal. And the reason we went is that I knew that prescription drugs in Canada were much less expensive. Women who were dealing with breast cancer, working class women, walked into the pharmacy. They purchased the breast cancer medicine that they needed. This is not generic, brand name medicine for 1/10 the price they're paying in the United States. I was the first member of Congress to do that. Others followed. Now millions of people, by the way, get their medicine from Canada. We should not have to get medicine from Canada. Pharmaceutical industry has got to stop ripping us off. Now, when you got 29 million uninsured, even more underinsured, when we're paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, it turns out that we are spending per person in healthcare almost 3 times more than they do in the United Kingdom, where they guarantee healthcare to all of their people. We are spending 50% more than the French, who guarantee healthcare to all of their people, much more than the Canadians, who guarantee all of healthcare to all of their people. It seems to me that the time is now for us to say loudly and clearly that in the United States of America, healthcare is a right for all people. And we are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when we do that, not only do we make the nurses and the doctors' jobs easier, because they're going to be able to treat everybody in a comprehensive way, we're going to save the middle class many thousands of dollars a year on healthcare costs. We began our campaign for the presidency of the United States 9 months ago. And when we began it, I think we were at 3-4% in the polls. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any organization. And frankly, not so many people outside of Vermont knew who Bernie Sanders was. But the message that we have been bringing forth to the American people, a message which says that the economy today is rigged, that it benefits the wealthy and the powerful at the expense of everybody else, that the campaign finance system that exists today is corrupt and undermining American democracy. That message is resonating all across this country. And here we are in Iowa, and 1 week from yesterday, there will be the first caucus in the country. I believe that we have an excellent chance to win that caucus if, and here is the if we have a large voter turnout. It is going to be a very, very close election. But I believe that if working people want to be part of a campaign which says enough is enough, our government has got to represent all of us and not a handful of campaign contributors. If those people come out and vote, we will win, and we'll win big. Let me also say this. This campaign is different from other campaigns, not just because of the fact that I am perhaps the most progressive member of the Senate and my agenda in this campaign is the most progressive. This campaign is more than that. And that is what I say every single day, and I repeat to you now from the bottom of my heart. No president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else can do it alone. All right? Now, I want to tell you a painful truth that you understand as proud trade unionists, but not all people in America understand. And that is that the powers that be, Wall Street, whose greed and recklessness and illegal behavior brought this country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, they have endless supplies of money. Endless. In fact, somebody on Wall Street now, I think just announced, is going to spend $600,000 in ads against me here in Iowa this week. $600,000 from one guy. He surely will. So you got the power of Wall Street. I want to remind you something about Wall Street. You know, Congress, against my vote, helped to bail them out because the banks were too big to fail. You remember that? Well, you won't be shocked to know that 3 out of the 4 largest banks in this country are bigger today than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. And you know what I think? When you have a handful of huge financial institutions with incredible economic and political power, maybe it is time we broke them up. But it's not just Wall Street. You deal all of the time with corporate America, whose greed, whose unquestionable greed, they want more and more and more. And they're prepared to step on every working person in this country to get more and more and more. We got to take them on. We got to take on the corporate media that decides what we see and what we hear. We got to take on the large campaign contributors. That's not an easy fight, and no one president alone can do it. And that is why what this campaign is about is a political revolution. We need trade unionists. We need millions of people to stand up and be involved in the political process in a way that we have not seen for a very, very long time. What we are fighting for, brothers and sisters, is not only for our well-being. We're fighting for our kids. We're fighting for our parents. We're fighting for the planet. This is a fight that we cannot afford to lose, and together we will not lose. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, everybody. That was unexpected. I turned on, I was looking at Twitter and was shooting some stuff around and saw all of a sudden, hey, Bernie's on C-SPAN. So thank you, whoever dropped that link, Twitter. We will do the new real newsroom. Give me about 10 minutes. Just got to do a few things and we'll get that started. Thank you all for being here.